Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre with TeddyBaldassarre.com, and in this video we're looking at a fantastic watch from Hamilton, the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot Day Date, or also known as the Coupe. So if you're new to this channel, this is where we cover watches available for purchase on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com, as an authorized dealer. In this video, I'm going to be handing it off to my colleague, Danny Milton. Danny's actually an owner of this piece, so it makes sense to have him share some of his thoughts as a long-term owner of this watch. In this video, he'll give his thoughts on the piece, go into the details, everything you need to know, and also throughout the video, if you have further questions or looking to buy this watch, check out the link in the description down below to the product page. Without further ado, I'll hand it off to Danny, and I'll take a closer look at this watch.
Anyone who knows me knows I'm a massive cinephile. I love to dive into the intersection between watches and movies. And one movie that hits that sweet spot more than any is 2014's Christopher Nolan film, Interstellar. The movie features two watches prominently, a watch that has entered the cultural zeitgeist via the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph, and the Hamilton Khaki Pilot Day Date Automatic. It represents the two watches that McConaughey's character Cooper owns, one of which he gives to his daughter, Murph, hence the name. Now, the other watch, the one that he wears on his voyage to space, never really got a nickname. Unofficially, myself and others that I know have referred to it as the Coupe watch. It's a watch that I picked up right after the film was released in 2014, and one that I've owned continuously for the more than decade since. Yes, Interstellar has been out for more than a decade. I have put that watch through its paces. It means a lot to me. It was the first watch I bought with my own hard-earned money at my first job, and it's a watch that hasn't been serviced in the decade plus and still runs admirably. Today we're going to be talking about the Hamilton Khaki Pilot Day Date Automatic in detail. A bit about mine, an owner's review of the previous generation, and the new generation. The difference mainly being the movement inside and how it's decorated. But those details are important to understanding the watch in total. Now going back a bit, I've long been on the record as a huge fan of the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph in all its guises. From the original prop watch never intended for the general public, to the startling bit of fan service upon the release of the 42mm version. And that was just preamble to the massive box office of the 38mm Murph, one of my all-time favorites, now well into its sequel phase with a white dial variation. But before the Murph, there was the Coupe, and taking from McConaughey's character, his test pilot turned astronaut, this was the ideal watch on the wrist for the adventure ahead. The Hamilton Khaki Pilot Day Date Automatic. And that's the subject of today's review, my experience with the Hamilton Coupe. Now, first things first, this watch has what I would call, in a pretty intense way, presence. It is a 42mm watch, but it's a watch that effectively has no bezel whatsoever. That means it is all dial. Now, to me, that harkens back to the sole intention of pilot's watches, which is intense legibility, and largesse for when flying aircrafts being able to look down at your wrist and spot the time on the fly. This has sort of a Flieger-esque layout to it, but much more modernized and fit for the pseudo-futuristic nature of the film Interstellar. The dimensions check in exactly as follows: 42mm in diameter, case height of 12mm, and a tidy lug-to-lug of 47.6mm. Now, I have a 6¼ inch wrist, so you gotta trust me when I say, this watch does fit smaller wrists. However, it does have a perceived size, just based on that bezel-less dial layout. I've had plenty of people, including our studio team who shot this watch, tell me, this thing's pretty big. Having worn it more than a decade, I can tell you it doesn't wear large, aided by the black dial, and it's a really fun watch overall. For comparison, IWC's Mark 20 pilot's watch has a diameter 2mm smaller than the Hamilton, yet a longer lug-to-lug of 49mm, and that's below the span of the previous generations of the Mark. The bulk of the finishing gets tool watch appropriate brushing, but there's a bit of flash in the pronounced high polished bevel running the length of both case sides, even extending to the crown guards. The crown is signed with the Hamilton H and pushes in, rendering the case water resistant to 100 meters. It's not screw down, but that 100 meters still offers a sense of security. The dial is protected by a flat sapphire crystal, offering a clear view resulting from a healthy dose of anti-reflective coating. Flip the case over and you'll find an exhibition case back with a nice view of the movement within. Now we'll get into the details of the movement later, but in terms of the ownership review aspect of this, my watch is effectively identical to the current production version of the Coupe, with the difference being the movement inside. Now we're going to get into the movement in detail later on in this review, but it's important now that I'm talking about the exhibition case back to note that My watch differs from the regular production watch in the sense that it uses the ETA caliber 2834 as opposed to the renamed and adjusted H40 caliber, which is still technically based on that movement, and effectively is that movement, with some subtle and savvy changes. The Khaki Pilot Day-Date Auto is available on your choice of black or brown leather straps that feature contrasting white stitching, a great pilot's watch look if there ever was one. But for maximum cinematic authenticity, which I opted for, go for the stainless steel bracelet. It is a substantial 3-link affair featuring a mild taper and subtle hints of polish on the center link's edges. The signed twin push-button clasp is nicely finished, with the outer receiving a satin brush center and polished bevels. The clasp itself is machined, and there are 3 points of micro-adjust. While the bracelet as a whole doesn't stand on the cutting edge in terms of modern on-the-fly adjustability, it's perfectly serviceable at a price point that hovers right around the $1,000 mark. As I mentioned before, a classic pilot's watch is all about the dial, and this watch over-delivers in that department. With a look that aces the cockpit instrument aesthetic, the Khaki Pilot Day-Date is as legible as an altimeter on the wrist, with its various elements well separated, making it easy to read in a flash. A matte black finish allows the white and silver markings to pop, laid out in the following manner. The minute scale and massive orientation triangle at 12 makes up the outer section of the dial, with 5-minute Arabic markers a bit further inward. Further inward still, there's a fully demarcated 12-hour scale in white, and you'll find unframed day and date apertures located below 12 and above 6, respectively, along with the Hamilton word mark and automatic just outside of the hand stack. Now, executing an instrument-style dial can result in a fairly flat appearance, but Hamilton has injected a bit of dimension and texture by way of the big triangle and the 5-minute Arabics. If you look closer, you'll see the silver elements are raised, and further examination reveals a vertically striped texture that plays with the light in a way that adds some real movement to a dial that could be rather sterile. The hands get a semi-skeletonized design for the hour and minute hands, bearing a slight resemblance to the modern Seamaster 300M, with the spear point second hand getting a lollipop counterweight. The tip of the hour hand is hollow, making it a simple matter to read the 12-hour scale, and the hands feature thoughtful loom placement in terms of after-hours legibility. Taken as a whole, a dial that flirts with being a bit too matter-of-fact gets plenty of visual interest, while remaining easy to read, even under less than ideal conditions. Now, getting back to the movement, the ability for the Swatch Group to utilize ETA calibers is a massive plus. I mean, they have countless workhorse movements to draw from. And as I mentioned with my watch, the 2014 version of the Hamilton Khaki Pilot Day-Date Automatic, again a mouthful, utilizes the ETA caliber 2834-2. Now, Hamilton has since renamed that the H40, still based on the ETA caliber 2834-2, with one major change. The beat rate has been reduced from 4 Hz down to 3 Hz. And you might ask yourself, why? And the reason here is it increases the power reserve up to a massive 80 hours. Now you might think to yourself, do I need all that power reserve? And I can tell you there is some special magic of putting a watch down on one day, coming back about 3 days later, picking it up, and it's still ticking and ticking accurately. Now the reduction to 21,600 vibrations per hour, or 3 Hz, means the second hand sweep isn't quite as smooth or languid as it is in the 4 Hz configuration, but I think you get over it with the added benefit of the power reserve. The 2834-2, or H40, also features a bidirectional winding rotor and a Niverox 2 hairspring, and it hacks and hand winds. Visible through the display caseback, it's a rather austere looking caliber, but offers a clean, industrial finish and gets the nice touch of a semi-skeletonized rotor with a vintage H as a cutout decoration. Now the H on the rotor, while present on the H40 version of the 2834-2, is not present on my personal version of the coupe. I have a much more standard fare rotor with the Hamilton logo engraved. A small difference, but still worth pointing out. Now let's look at the pros and cons and start, as usual, with the cons. The first would be something we just talked about, which is if a smooth second sweep is important to you, then the reduction from 4 Hz to 3 Hz might bother you a bit. But I've got to tell you, kind of injecting a pro in here, that the added benefit of the 80-hour power reserve far outweighs any con that might come with a slightly slower and slightly less smooth seconds hand sweep. Now, while the lug-to-lug is favorable on this watch, I don't want to undersell the fact that the dial does appear to be quite large. Now, I have to think that if you're getting into a watch like this, you have some kind of interest in either pilot's watches or the movie Interstellar. And in either situation, this is a faithful execution of that design style. And it is large because of the lack of bezel, but having had it more than a decade, I can tell you it doesn't bother me one bit. And while the bracelet may not be at the forefront of refinement in terms of micro adjust on the fly, I can tell you again, 11 years on, it's one of the most comfortable bracelets I've had for the money, and even for a lot more money. It is solidly constructed through and through, and with the twin trigger deployant and milled clasp, it just speaks to a quality that belies the price point. In terms of the pros, I'm going to lead off with durability. I keep talking about how long I've owned this watch, and I haven't serviced it, and it still runs admirably. All of these things speak to the workhorse quality of an ETA 2834 caliber, but also speak to the workhorse quality of ETA calibers in general. Again, a massive value add to the Swatch Group portfolio. Another is just the overall style of this watch. Now, I have a lot of watches in my collection, I'm sure you know. I'm sure you've seen me talk about plenty of watches, both in written form and on video. But this watch is one I get commented on the most by people that I know that aren't necessarily into watches. It has a certain handsome, elevated style and quality to it that can't really put my finger on, but it shines in public. And I don't mean that in the physical sense. The raised numerals with that verticality really catch the light. You know, if you hold the watch away from light sources, they almost disappear into the black dial beneath, but when they catch the light just so, it's magical. I personally like this watch because it's a pure sports watch. From the crown guards to the 100-meter water resistance to the solid bracelet, it's something I know I can take in any environment. I've worn this on the beach, I've worn this while traveling, I've worn it in professional environments. It kind of works everywhere, and I love that. Now, of course, I can't get over my own personal biases. I love movies. I love the film Interstellar. I bought this watch after seeing the film Interstellar. I also don't have any other pilot's watch in my collection, so it's not like the pilot's watch motif really speaks to me. But this watch not only speaks to me, but has grown on me over time. So final thoughts. This is a watch that is highly undervalued and underspoken about. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do this review in the first place. With all the talk about the Murph in the world, it's time to shine a light on the coupe. Sure, it's bigger than the Murph. Well, if you want to talk about the original Murph, it's actually the exact same size of 42 millimeters, but I think the Murph 38 has really taken off in a special sort of way. So this being 42 millimeters versus the 38, let's just say it's larger. But I think that it offers a bit of magic as sort of the unsung hero of the movie Interstellar. It's the watch McConaughey's Cooper takes with him to space and wears in space. Now, of course, this doesn't happen in real life, but he did play a NASA astronaut, so we can sort of chalk up the coupe to being a space-flown watch. But more than that, I rarely get to do a review of a watch I've worn as long as I've worn this one. It's special to me because I dished out my hard-earned cash for it, and it has paid back dividends over time. I've not had to put a single extra cent into this watch since then. So if you're thinking about the Hamilton Khaki Pilot Day-Date Automatic, I say this to you. Don't be scared off by the size, but be prepared for the size. Understand what you're getting in a watch that hovers right around $1,000, is a quality timepiece with a workhorse movement from a blue chip name from the Swatch Group. But also, what's not to love? You have the connection to the film, you have the connection to Hamilton's American heritage, and you have a watch that boasts both a day and a date complication in a legible dial format that can handle anything. This is a watch that needs to be spoken about more, and I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments.
All right, guys, that's all we have for this video. If you did enjoy it, please give this one a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Really do appreciate that. That does help out the channel. Also, if you are in the market for this watch, it is available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. TeddyBaldassarre.com is an authorized dealer for all the brands that we carry. Every purchase comes with quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. Now we're able to continue to do what we do on this channel, but really on that main channel is through selling watches. So if you are in the market for a watch, we'd absolutely love to have your business. Let's keep doing what we're doing here. We love what we do. Guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.